quick question. Have you ever imagined that your imaginary friend could talk back to you? And that's me assuming that you have an imaginary friend. Like, have you ever imagined that they have their own thoughts and information that you had no idea about? Well, you're in for a ride, because regardless of your answer to that, there's already a group, yes, an entire community, that experiences what I just described, or at least claims to. It's honestly a pretty interesting group, and what better way to explore than a YouTube video essay? And since we are talking about an entire community, I figure I should just put a warning here. Do not harass anyone we're talking about. I know you guys are probably going to go visit the subreddit, and that's okay, but just don't be annoying and be like, Tuv sent me here. Don't do that. Editor, make sure to put a disclaimer. Don't be annoying, and just enjoy the video. Anyway, I figured I should show you guys some of the Reddit posts as an introduction. First one is, he once woke me up because I was late for work. Literally touched my shoulder. That's from someone who swears their tulpa got them physically out of bed on a random work day. And that term I just used, tulpa. Just know that's the community's catch-all term for these imaginary, I don't want to say creatures, but companions that each of them has, and we'll get more into that later in the video. Anyway, back to the quotes. Another said, one time my tulpa ranted to me about sunfish. It was so funny and random, I was like, where did you learn about this? And to clarify, that user's imaginary friend has knowledge that she didn't know herself. So what's going on? And apparently, a lot of other people claim that their tulpas know information that they themselves do not. I know, it's kind of confusing, but that's just how it is. Then we have another example of this type of situation where the tulpa knows information that the host doesn't. Sometimes I talk to my tulpa about a personal problem I'm having, and he'll 10 out of 10 times give me an answer I never even thought about. And I just have one more to show you guys. There are a lot of things that make Nicole's presence apparent. 1, she can stop me from thinking any bad thoughts, hurting me or her. 2, weird sensations while switching. That one is more of the imaginary friend acting beyond just thinking, like a completely different person. Now, I know what your first thought is. Is this schizophrenia? Is this some form of DID? Well, they make it a hard push that it's not. It's in their Reddit rules. They're like, nope, this is not schizophrenia. So we're just going by their book here, you know? I hope you're still with me up until this point, because I know this all sounds kind of just wacky. I just became so fascinated with this topic when I was just looking up okay guys, in case you're wondering how I get video ideas, I go to Google and I look up random words. I'm pretty sure I looked up something like, is there a common internet friend that everyone has? I was just like, okay, I just want to make a video on something so obscure, and then r/tulpas came about. So we just had to deep dive. Like, I'm so interested in this topic. I think the thing that fascinates me the most about the situation is that it's not just one person's story. Like I already said, there's a whole community. These guys, tulpamancers as they are called, are very deliberate to distinguish it from any other conditions that you might want to describe it as, one of them being schizophrenia. In fact, from their posts and comments, it comes out so clear they don't see their tulpas as anything classifiable as negative or that it has to be dealt with, you know, like a mental disorder. They see them as real actual beings that support life in different circumstances. Real enough to have their own personalities, give advice, tell jokes, even argue with them sometimes. So basically, that's what this video essay is about, and just to see how extensive it can get. With that being said, my name is Tuv, and welcome back to another video, or maybe welcome to the channel. Hopefully I can earn your subscription by the end of this video, and let's just get right into the topic. Into the subreddit. Alright, so let's take a peek inside of r/tulpas, and this might surprise you. This subreddit isn't just like, hey, I have an imaginary friend, ask me anything. It's more like a really creative support group, super niche place. Wow, what a great choice of words by me. But yeah, it's hard to describe. The first thing that hits you, and remember this is just how I experienced as I researched this video, is how everyone's in this weird therapy meets group chat mode. But instead of like, but how does that make you feel? They say something along the lines of, okay, but what did your tulpa do? Like, you know, it's a subreddit about the tulpas, so they gotta talk about the tulpas. A perfect way to summarize it, it's like, it's less super serious therapy session and more like sitting by a campfire advising each other with occasional jokes. I mean, you'll be scrolling through a very endearing check-in like, I got the test back and the one Via helped with, I'm gonna assume Via is the name of their tulpa, got a 100% while the half I did practically failed. And right underneath that, there's someone posting an art collab between themselves and their tulpa. Away from that, another big part of the subreddit, again from my experience looking in, is what I'd call an advice culture. And it's a very strong one, in fact. Someone says they're struggling with their forcing session, whoa, pause. What do I even mean by forcing session? So look, forcing in this community means creating the tulpa. You gotta force. That's the term. It's force. So you're gonna hear me use the word force a lot, and it just means them creating the imaginary friend known as tulpa. I want to make that clear. So yeah, like I said, someone could post that they're struggling with their forcing session, and then 5 minutes later, you've got regulars in the replies going, is it fine to speak mentally to your tulpa so you don't look like a nut when other people are around? My guess is that varies. Or this absolute gem, paraphrased a bit, I've had Jared my tulpa for about 3 months now. However, it recently seems that Jared's stomach is undergoing some strange problems. Everywhere I go, I am followed by a strange mental smell of eggy farts. And even on such occasions, members still jump in with advice. I know this sounds dumb and somewhat cruel, but if you try to lock him up in an enclosed room, and those are real conversations. And if you've watched my other videos, maybe this sounds realistic or maybe it doesn't, but it's the fact that this subreddit is kind of more wholesome than everything else I've ever covered. I mean, do you guys remember what we were covering in 2022? r/Jissy carts? Like, Jesus. We, yeah, let's just stick to talking about tulpas for this video. Anyway, something else I found pretty interesting is the structure. And before that, I have to say what I'm covering here, like the advice culture, membership, guides, etc. might be true to many other niche subreddits, but it's just a whole other level of interesting given what this specific subreddit is all about. So just keep that in mind. Back to the structure. From what I could tell, the mods are basically camp counselors, you know, people that feel like they've seen it all, and that's probably why their FAQ totally reads like a digital psychology textbook, and shockingly, people actually read it. And I'm not throwing shade when I say that, I'm just describing what it feels like. I'll give credit where credit is due, they actually do a solid job of keeping things from going off the rails with the help of the very active advisors. And there are many examples of that, but one interesting one is the general shutting down or discouraging of the inevitable. I made a tulpa of my ex. Yes, that actually happened. I don't even want to think of my exes, let alone making a tulpa of them, an imaginary companion of the ex. Get the f out of my house. What are you talking about? Literally, what the f? Bruh, but I'm going off script with that one. Yeah, I could really rant about that one for days, but that's crazy. That's crazy, dog, but let's keep going. You know, they gently remind folks that they, the group that is, are not mental health professionals. And FYI, that one comes up a lot more than you think. There's a lot of discussions at the boundary of, this is something we can for sure recommend for you, and this is a doctor's territory. And also, don't tell your doctor/therapist about tulpas. Yeah, it's definitely a murky topic from the outside looking in, so I'll just leave it there. Lastly, I found that humor is pretty much everywhere in there. You've got memes about hearing your tulpa amidst chaos, comparing tulpas with people in media, inside jokes about tulpas playing pranks, or even sharing lighthearted moments based on the current topic of discussion in the subreddit. One I found interesting, for instance, is a tulpa's reply about whether they can generally taste food or drinks of the host. Quote, yeah, well, sometimes. There are foods and things I'm not too fond of, so I decide not to taste those things. Always happy for the taste of a donut though. Smiley face. Now, I know I've already brought this up, but just want to make it clear that beneath the memes, it's actually a chill and supportive community. Again, I don't want any of you guys harassing any of these people. You'll see people open up about loneliness, feeling like an outsider, struggling with ADHD, or even just not vibing with reality sometimes. So it's pretty wholesome that they can find a community where they can fit in. And in general, I get the sense that at the core of it, really r/tulpas is not trying to explain everything all the time. I mean, nobody in there is pretending this makes logical sense 100% of the time. They're just rolling with it. For a lot of the folks there, from the posts and comments I went through, living with a hyperactive, sassy, loyal little inner roommate is just what works for them. The rest of it, they'll figure it out as they go. Now, for sure, Reddit is the central piece of this whole community, but just like almost every other community and belief system on the internet, there has to be lore. There's often lore or something of that nature. So, do the tulpamancers have one? Lore. Fact, fiction, or a little of both? I know it's pretty easy to hear tulpa and think, it's just another Reddit trend. Maybe even a TikTok trend. What's going on? This sounds stupid. Sounds wacky. Alright, and I'll agree with you, it sounds a little bit wacky. Well, maybe a lot of bit wacky. But the roots go way deeper, actually. We're talking monks in the mountains level of deep. it has a link to a type of Buddhism known as Tibetan Buddhism. Now, before we go any further, it's worth zooming out on the Buddhism side of this, because the Tibetan Buddhism isn't just, quote, regular Buddhism, but in colder weather, because Tibetan is known as the land of snow. It's special in that it inherited a lot from late Indian Buddhism, things like serious monastic traditions. At one point, Tibet had some of the largest Buddhist monasteries in the world, a deep, almost academic philosophy, and these elaborate tantric practices that mix meditation with very highly symbolic rituals. But here's a little twist in this anecdote. While all that monk life discipline was going on, Tibet also kept its older, more local traditions alive. These include things like worship of powerful regional deities, folk beliefs, and protective spirits. And also, instead of clashing, those older gods and spirits just got absorbed into the already huge Buddhist collection of higher-ups that they revere and all. Now, one thing that's unique to Tibetan Buddhism, and of course relevant to understanding how something like a tulpa could exist in its worldview, is something known as the tulku system. A tulku is an incarnate lama. Now, when I say lama, I'm not talking about the animal llama. I know it literally is said the same way. The actual definition is an honorific title applied to a spiritual leader in Tibetan Buddhism, meaning Tibetans believe certain compassionate spiritual leaders are reborn over and over. Like they die, but their spirit goes on through a new life, often identified by certain signs as a baby. So when a child is recognized as a tulku, they're normally said to carry the wisdom and authority of their past lives. Hey, just putting my 2 cents in, but that seems like a lot of pressure for a 1-second-year-old. The most famous example of these leaders is the Dalai Lama. We are currently on the 14th Dalai Lama, but each historical one carried a specific accomplishment. The 5th Dalai Lama being one very notable one because he even became the political ruler of Tibet in the 1600s and built the massive Potala Palace in Lhasa City, China. Fast forward a few centuries, Tibet was incorporated into China in 1951, and in 1959, the current 14th Dalai Lama fled to India. This is when the Tibetan diaspora began. And with it, Tibetan Buddhism started spreading worldwide, and ever since, its teachings and tidbits, including some of the more niche concepts like tulpas, have caught the attention of spiritual seekers, scholars, and eventually even the internet's weirdest corners. So that's kind of the zoomed out idea. I summarized my best. I can't give you guys a freaking 6-hour video about this, but let's clap it up for me. Summarizing that. Okay, but since we're zoomed out, now let's zoom back in. Let's zoom back in a little bit. In Tibetan Buddhism, these mental creations, the tulpa that is, were called sprolpa. The idea was simple, that you could will a being into existence simply by using your mind. And here's the part that I think trips most people up. It wasn't a, yay, I have an imaginary best friend situation. It was more like a tool. Your tulpa apparently helped you work through some personal block, maybe your fear of snakes, and once its job was done, you would dissolve it and go back to monk business as usual. Fast forward to the early 1900s, and we meet Alexandre David Niel, a French explorer who trekked through Tibet, hung out with monks, and came back with the first big Western write-up in magic and mystery in Tibet. She described tulpas as, quote, phantoms, and even made one herself. Well, that was until it started getting a little too much, for lack of a better term, main character energy. Her solution was to politely unmake it before things got awkward. And of course, I had to summarize Neil's story, because again, this can't be a 12-hour video, bro. But just know that Neil's story is just as mind-blowing as the existence of the Reddit community we're talking about. For example, when she said that she unmade her tulpa, it wasn't just like that. She claims it took her 6 months to completely undo the situation. It had gotten to a point where even after returning home to France from China, she could not get rid of the monk tulpa despite her expectation that the change would probably erase it, or if she didn't put any effort to channel the monk, aka switch, the monk won't just appear. So yeah, it was a pretty damning situation. Okay, so now let's cut to the early 2000s. Yes, hey, shout out team 2002. 2002 babies, where y'all at? Hey, yeah, I'm still young. Bro, I swear, I'm like on a 5 video in a row of just saying that I'm young. You know what? I'm unk. There you go. I'm unk. Hey, y'all, the facial hair coming in though. I'm just saying, I'm a cool unk. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, we're getting off topic. We're talking about the early 2000s internet here. A time when fandom forums, 4chan, try not to laugh YouTube videos were a thing. Someone stumbles on the tulpa idea and goes, wait, you can DIY a mind friend? Okay, I'm clearly inventing their thought process there, but the r/tulpa subreddit was made in 2012. And the concept shifted from spiritual discipline to, I'm going to build the most oddly specific tulpa my brain can construct. Yes, there are rainbow dash tulpas and anime tulpas. Guys, we're on the internet, that's not surprising at all. Now, I know this section was kind of supposed to cover the law and dissect the fact versus fiction perspective, but that's not that easy to do. I mean, the origins from Buddhism are pretty clear, but then when it gets to what's real about tulpas versus what's not, it's a very, deep issue to simply lay out in black and white. Plenty of tulpamancers swear that their tulpas know things that they don't. On the other hand, skeptics say that they probably have a mental disorder or are just trolling the entire internet. So again, it's a complex thing. Where are the lines drawn? Now that we've seen that this is not a straight fact or fiction kind of thing, it's worth trying to look at the rules. Because, you guessed it, it's kind of complicated. I mean, once you've got a whole community of people building, talking to, and in some cases, living with their tulpas, the next reasonable question is, how are rules agreed on? And spoiler, they sort of aren't. First place I want to start is the rights. Yes, tulpa rights. And this might sound a bit trivial to an outsider, but this is literally one of those topics that hits the subreddit hard. There is a post titled, "Tulpas have equal rights as hosts," and under it is a very, heated or charged debate including tulpas themselves giving a take. Quote, "I'm a tulpa, and I want to talk about this. I disagree massively. I don't think, as a tulpa, that I deserve the same as my host." And very closely related to the rights issue is the issue of morality. And one perspective for morality is killing. Maybe not in the same exact way it happens, in real life, but unmaking the tulpa. There is a thread dedicated to that, and yes, tulpas have given their take, and I quote, "The point being that tulpas are people who may be different than you in a rather significant way, but people nonetheless. And killing people does harm to those people, plus any potential psychological impacts to the tulpamancer of having just done that to a person." End quote. And by the way, there seems to be a lot of gray areas in the gap between outright killing a tulpa and getting rid of the sort of unwanted behavior from them. And I did actually find a thread of a user claiming they were being oppressed by their tulpa with no way of getting rid of it. The comments range from tolerating that as part of their psyche, all the way to creating new kinds of Jackie Chan tulpas to fight it off, because that one had gone crazy. Now, if you think those gray areas are wacky, this next one is gonna slap you across the face. And I quote, "My tulpa Samantha and I had a few arguments about our mismatched appetite for sexual activity, and that was the start of our divide, and it only got worse. Posts range from that to outright sexual or NSFW territory. Quote, "I'm definitely starting to lean more towards lesbian than bi because she, the tulpa, is only interested in girls and doesn't ever look at men. Sometimes I have sex with her, and I definitely dominate her. I say this because we can have very precocious sexualities or be extremely conservative. This idea of having sex with your tulpa," I can't believe I just said that, seems to have very mixed reactions, and it doesn't seem like the rules are really set for that one. In a thread where one user asks outrightly if it's okay, 3 primary responses emerge. 1, those who say yes, it's okay. 2nd, that it's absolutely not okay. And 3rd, those that refuse to even engage on the topic and find it weird to be asked to talk about their sexual activity with online strangers. The only thing I found equally puzzling in relation to that is the idea of dating and marriage as it relates to tulpas. And believe it or not, there are users who are claiming that they are currently dating their tulpa or even are married to them. Yes, full-blown commitment. And I quote, "I'm married to 2 of my tulpas. It's messy sometimes, but we're fortunate to love each other deeply." Now, there are generally accepted lines that can be crossed within the community, including the replacement of actual medical attention with tulpas, but then every once in a while, it seems these two have some pushback. For example, a general rule of thumb that I figured out was the, quote, "Tulpas don't replace human relationships," end quote, but soon enough, I found a thread claiming all that wasn't right. Quote, "Lol, me and my tulpa have been together for 6 months now, mainly just me and him and basically nobody else." I mean, out there, it's pretty easy to find articles, videos, etc. placing tulpas as part of a medical condition, while inside of the community, the first thing you encounter is literally an FAQ with a clapback against such claims. No, we don't have DID or schizophrenia. Tulpamancy is voluntary and controlled, not involuntary or distressing. What I would like to mention is that there actually have been some scientific studies on this group, and it has some pretty interesting results. Samuel Vasayer from McGill University, for instance, surveyed tulpamancers and found that 56% reported a mental or neurodevelopmental disorder before creating a tulpa. 32 of 57 respondents, which is 56%, reported being diagnosed with a mental or neurodevelopmental disorder, with the most common diagnosis being depressive disorders. But even on that, there comes a little bit of a twist. That being that 91% said their tulpas had a significant or somewhat positive impact on their overall life, and 78% said the same for their mental health. Very interesting statistics overall. Then there's the plural conversation. Plenty of tulpamancers identify as plural, more than one identity in the same mind on purpose. But then that idea of plurality is a whole area of debate regarding the possibility of a person identifying as non-unitary in a way that doesn't have negative effects or connotations. Like rejecting the idea of being seen as suffering from something. On the other hand, there's the usual pushback for people wondering why the idea of how someone identifies as gets pushed on them. Anyway, let's just say that within the community, when it comes to where the lines are drawn, it's not pretty clear and not everyone can agree to one way that is the correct way. The process and the experiences. Alright, now let's get into the part that maybe I should have started with. How does one create a tulpa? How do you do it? What's going on? Now, of course, I won't give every version of how that happens, but I hope by the end of this you get a good idea. So first off is the how. How do you make the tulpa? Well, many extensive guides exist in the subreddit, and what I'm about to tell you is more like a little version of each. Most importantly, the process is not treated like a strict formula so much as a personal journey, something you adapt to fit your style. But then at its core, it always starts with a simple idea of treating them, the tulpas, as real before they feel that way. It usually begins with forcing. You do things like narrate your day, ask them questions, or even pause to hear what they quote say back, even though in the beginning, you're the one that's filling in those answers. I can imagine this feels odd at first, like you're just going crazy. But the advice from the Redditors is to keep going. And one day, after thinking you're going insane and talking to yourself, those imagined exchanges should start to feel way more real. And FYI, forcing can be brutal apparently. And I quote, "In earlier months, I would force until I either got a migraine or was too exhausted to do anything but pass out. I'd take caffeine and Tylenol to fight the headache and just keep going, until I literally couldn't bear to sit upright." Now from there, many people seem to give their tulpa a form, something to make them easier to picture. This can be anything from a human figure to a talking fox to a character pulled straight out of fiction. I mean, when I was younger, my imaginary friend was Bubble Buddy from SpongeBob. Can anyone else agree with me on that one? I think that's a pretty common one to have as an imaginary friend. Let me know. Did you guys have Bubble Buddy as an imaginary friend? Let me know in the comments. Some hosts describe every detail from the way they move, the sound of their voice, and even their favorite clothes or scent. This is the visualization phase, if you will, and a lot of this visualization happens in what is called a wonderland, which is basically an imagined shared space that can be as simple as a quiet park bench or elaborate as a fantasy castle. Interestingly, Wonderland is described in the community as essentially daydreaming. Quote, "Your Wonderland isn't necessarily real nor is it fake. It's like a dreamland that you and your tulpas create. It's kind of like a separate world connected to the outside world only through your brain. And what could that look like? Well, here's an example. It's flat grass, 2 small houses, more like shacks, mailboxes for each one, a statue of us, and a swing set. Personality often comes next, though not everyone plans it. Some users wrote down traits they like their tulpa to have, and then imagined them into place during early conversations. Others, from what I've gathered, let the tulpa develop naturally, and even for those who plan everything in detail, there is a common warning: expect surprises. Tulpas apparently have a habit of developing quirks that you don't get to choose. The real progress, though, seems to happen through daily interaction. In tulpa terms, this is still called forcing, whether it is active, like dedicated conversation and visualization, or passive, like thanking your tulpa throughout the day and inviting their input on small things. Some hosts even talk to their tulpas while commuting. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude to these people, but it just sounds like, when there's when people record those homeless people that are going crazy in the New York subway. That's what that sentence reminded me of. You could even talk to your tulpa while commuting. It's yeah, you can, but from the outside looking in, you kind of look crazy. Am I gonna get hate from r/tulpas? Guys, I swear, I'm trying to be as non-biased as possible. It's just interesting is what I'm trying to say. Others check in during a walk or while making dinner. The advice in regard to that is mainly the same: consistency. Then at some point, and again there's no set timeline, one hits what the community calls first contact. This is when the replies you've been imagining start to feel independent, when they surprise you with a comment or a joke you can't quite claim as your own. And I quote, "I just recently had my first contact. I went to sleep and woke up 3 hours later with wobbly vision and could hear Roxanne as she seems to prefer being called as of this stage. Speaking somewhat in Tulpish and somewhat in English, I only remember making out on my own." So basically, looks like their mind voice might sound like yours at first, but over time it can take on its own tone and rhythm. For some, the process stops there. Others push further into what's called imposition, a more advanced practice where they try to see, hear, or even physically sense their tulpa in the external world. That might mean picturing them sitting across from you at the dinner table, or hearing them speak as if they were standing right beside you, a pretty hard thing to learn apparently. Quote, Lumi learned imposition, learned to do it well, from walking with 3 of us between his college classes every day for a few weeks, and also outlining our bodies in the air with his hands occasionally at home. A good tip for us was doing that, and then walking around your tulpa to see them from another angle. The spinning perspective effect really helps our forms pop out visually. There's also the concept of switching, which I've already hinted at. This is when you step back entirely and the tulpa fully takes control of the body for a while. Here's how one host described it. It feels like only a second has passed when in reality, I was long gone enough for FAL to play MMOs for 5 hours straight. Now, don't even get me started on giving these people a Quest headset. I think their mind would break. But anyway. Now, after diving into this whole tulpa world, there are equal parts of being wowed and also going away with questions without any definitive answers. Like, for example, when does imagining a friend in your head stop being just imagination and start being friendship? And is that any different from spending hours with an AI chatbot that remembers your favorite pizza topping and checks in before your big exam? Because honestly, if a bot can talk to you through a bad day, or a tulpa can convince you to finally clean your room, does the origin story of either even matter? Think about the parallels. In my video on AI addiction, we saw how people out of the whim can form deep emotional bonds with something that they know isn't even remotely human, but it still feels personal and kinda alive. And then here with tulpas, it's different, but not that different. It depends on how you look at it. The tulpa stats are right in line. 91% say it makes their life better. 78% say it boosts their mental health. And if the benefit is there, why should it really affect anyone else? If they're not out hurting people, why should we care if people are creating imaginary friends in their home? Unless they're like messing with people in real life, unless your tulpa is messing with people. I just thought this topic was fascinating and wanted to cover it. Yeah, so it's worth making a video essay on it. I really like this one. With that being said, what do you guys think? What do my viewers think? Please let me know down in the comments. Are these people just going fucking crazy? Do you think they actually do have schizophrenia? Do you think they're just playing a joke? Or do you think they're not hurting anyone and they can create their tulpas if they want? That's kind of what I'm leaning more towards. But yeah, hello r/tulpas. I'm probably gonna be on there. But no ill will. Again, I don't know. I don't want to attack a freaking whole ass subreddit, man. I'm not attacking y'all. I'm literally just thought it was interesting. I sound like a broken record though. If you want to see more of my personality, go to twitch.tv/tuvington_ where I stream, and check out the second channel, Tuvington. And if you've made it this far, you probably like my videos. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to leave a like. And I will see you guys next time I upload.